My name is Darren Trofimczuk and welcome to Excel Part 1. In this video tutorial, I'm going to be taking you through a few basic concepts with getting started with using Excel. So we're going to first of all look at why we even use Excel. We're then going to look at some basic Excel layouts and the menu bar. I'm then going to talk to you about rows, columns, worksheets and cell references, what these actually are, show you some examples. And then we'll start looking at entering some basic data, numbers, text, and your different formatting options for these. And then lastly, we'll then look at using an Excel formula. And that will complete the Part 1 video. So let's get started. Now, the first thing when I talk about Microsoft Excel is there's different versions of Excel. And I'm using a Windows-based computer here. And usually if you've got your Windows software, Microsoft Office installed into your computer, you can usually just find it from this search bar, just as with all other Microsoft Office programs. For those using a Mac computer, it more or less works the same, but you will notice some features that can be different when you use the Excel version on a Mac. But that's something I'll be following up in a different video for those that are curious. Now, first of all, why do we even use Excel? And there's a number of reasons, really. First of all, most people associate Microsoft Excel with using numbers, calculations. As you can see here, I've got like an example of like what we call a worksheet with some basic items for like a small business. You can have the costs in different columns, and then you can use something called formulas to add these up and then do some simple calculations. Now, if you've got lots of data, this is where Excel becomes quite useful, because you can get this to automate part of that process, especially the calculation part, or when you need to keep it like a basic database, like for keeping track of your data. So Excel is really useful in the sense that you can try to keep better organized. You can easily replicate and copy bits of data. And for now, when you watch things on TV, and obviously we have these coronavirus times, sometimes you'll watch these hospitals and you'll see on their computer, they have Excel sheets where they not only use this for numbers, but to put basically data of like their patients in hospital, and they will have buttons and what they call dashboards. So this is more or less why we use Excel. The first thing to get us started is the actual structure of the worksheet and layout. Now, the first things we need to really be aware of is that with Microsoft Excel, we have columns which are represented as these letters, E, F, G, they usually start from A, and then we have rows. Okay, now the rows and columns is quite important if you've not used Excel before. And the reason being is that when you want to use something which is called a cell reference, so I'm going to color in this particular cell here, okay, and you can see that we can't really call this the red rectangle. We need to associate this with some kind of reference. And the easiest way to do this is in Microsoft Excel, when you select the cell or you color something in, you'll see that it changes here, and it's telling me here this is the cell reference C2. Okay, so essentially what Excel does, it always looks at the column wherever your number or character is placed, and then it takes the row. And this will be important later, because when we look at using something called formulas, you have to use the cell reference and not the values or the text that you use in that cell reference. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that what's quite useful to do sometimes is when you do use Excel, you've got this zoom function that you can zoom out the worksheet to look more closely at the cells. So you can actually just simply press the plus. It just makes it bigger. Sometimes this is quite useful if you want to just have a closer look at the data, if you've got lots of small numbers or text on there. The second thing is that Excel has what we call these worksheets, and you can have as many worksheets as you want, and you don't always have to have different Excel files saved. Okay, it's quite useful to actually, if you've got this kind of the same categories, but it's all part of one, say, business, what you can do is create multiple worksheets, and it's quite easy to do. You just press this plus icon and it will automatically, by default, add a new worksheet, and they usually are called sheet 1, sheet 2, and they're quite easy to rename. You simply just right click on your mouse, select rename, and then you can give your worksheet a new name. Okay. The next thing that we're going to look at is obviously the menu bar, and in this video I'm just going to introduce the basic concepts really and the layout of Excel. But you can see here already that there are loads of different options to choose from. You've got, first of all, your default page, which is usually the layout, the home screen, and then on this you've got a number of different icons. You've got some formatting icons, which is like for filling in or changing text colors. You've then got text formats to change the alignment. You've then also got something about the data types, and this is something I'll be talking about quite soon in this video. And then you've got some other useful icons such as conditional formatting, deleting, inserting rows or columns, and this auto sum, which is more or less something we'll be looking at when we use formulas, and also some other find and select or sorting icons. And this is more or less just in one part of the menu. Okay, so this worksheet I'm showing you, I'm going to be sharing an electronic copy of this, an Excel version, in the comments section, so you can easily take a copy to practice with. And what we're going to look at is some basic formatting if you wanted to change things on this. Now, much of the formatting has been done already on this file, but if you wanted to, say, remove some data or add a new column or delete a column, all you'd have to do is simply just click on the column, and usually I would do this by clicking on the top part, and you can right click and then press delete. So let's do that. Okay, and obviously the worksheet just automatically adjusts. Same thing for when you want to do any kind of rows or insert rows, same process, delete. Okay, if you want to insert a new row, okay, all you'd have to do is just press insert, and it will put one just below. You can also use your menu bar, as I mentioned earlier. You've got these insert and delete options here. So for example, if I go to this D column, I want to delete, okay, it will just automatically do this. So actually you've got another option rather than having to right click all the time just by looking on your menu bar. One of the other things you need to bear in mind is that when you do put data into your Excel sheet, you always need to keep an eye on what type of data you're actually entering. And when you look at if I take this example here, this tomatoes option, you'll see that we've got this tab up the top, which is the format type of the data. And you've got a number of different formats in Excel when you do use data. You can put general data, which is no particular category. It could be text, numbers, in other words, alphanumeric data, a mixture. You can also specify if you want to use numbers, currencies, dates, times, and so on. Now, you'll notice at the bottom here, you've also got this number formats or more number formats. And when you select this, this allows you to go into a bit more greater depth into changing the type of format. So for example, if I select text, okay, or number, you'll see that you can set the decimal places. And this is quite important. If I show you these costs, these price per units, you can see that they've got the $ currency in front of this, and you can also notice they're set to two decimal places. So what you need to do is if you go onto the extra settings for format settings, and I'll change this to currency, you can now see that my default currency on here is set to UK pounds. But what you can do is then change it to as many different types of currency as you want. So for example, if I now change this to pounds rather than dollars, and then I change the decimal place, I usually keep them at 2 most of the time. You can see it gives you an example. And when I press OK, it automatically adjusts your number. What I recommend, if you rather than do this for each number all the time, it's usually much more wiser just to, when you create your worksheet, is to set all the different types of format in advance, because the last thing you want to do is have to go through each numbers separately. So what I usually do is highlight the whole column as I create the table, and then set the format options automatically in bulk. Another thing that sometimes happens, which I've noticed with some of my students, when they do type into like a column, sometimes the text may not always fit in, and you'll see here, like for example, tomatoes, you can see it's actually in this part saying tomatoes, case of 12, doesn't quite fit in. There's a few quick solutions for this. The easiest one is to simply go in onto the top of the column chart part, and then just simply drag this across and automatically adjust the width of the cell that you want, or you can just double click and it will actually find the best suitable width for that text. So this is one way. Another quick solution is to actually look at your menu bar. As I said earlier, there's many different options to choose from and shortcuts here. So one of them is this merge and center option, or wrap text option. So if I wrap the text, okay, you'll see that it doesn't actually adjust the cell, and what it does, it just puts the text within the whole cell at the same width. Okay, another option is that you can merge cells together. So if I highlight these two cells and press merge, okay, it's not going, and then you'll see it actually puts the whole text into two different cells, but this effectively now becomes one cell reference, so A2. So you have to be careful with merging cells unless you really want to. I usually use these if I'm going to be like naming the table and I have like an extra part of the table on top with just the name. So I'm actually going to undo this, and undo is usually another useful feature with any Microsoft Office. You can simply press undo and put this like this and put the worksheet back. Okay. Now, another extra resource I've got for those watching this video is on my webpage, and this is darrentony.com. You'll find the link also on the comments section and the resource options. You can see it says darrentony.com, but you'll notice here that I have under my courses this Excel basics option. And I mentioned about cell references earlier, but it can actually get quite complicated because we also have this absolute, relative, and mixed cell type references. I've put some more information here for you to look at, but in this video, because I want to keep it very basic, I'm not going to talk about the differences between relative and absolute cell references. And I've also got some information here regarding some other features which we're going to be looking through in different videos. And one of them is going to be using things like formulas, which we're going to look at right now. And also later on in some videos, we're going to look at basic functions and filtering. So this is another useful resource for you just to have access to when you want to go through some of the different types of into more detail regarding how you go about using things like functions or charts. Okay, so let's go back to our Excel sheet. I'm going to go on to a new worksheet, and as you can see here, this was the one we looked at right at the beginning. And what I'm going to do is just enter some random numbers for now. So let's just put some numbers. Okay, this is nothing really, anything based on nothing. It's just random numbers, as you can see. I'm going to put some other values. Okay, and what I'm going to show you to do now is how we can use a formula. And this is, again, one of the basic concepts in Excel. If you have values and you want to do calculations, you need to try to do something with them. That's usually using some kind of calculation. Now, the easiest way to do this is when you do have your data and you want to just do the quick way, and there's many different ways to do this, but I'm going to show you the most basic way. You always start off first of all, you click the cell reference where you want to put the answer for whatever type of calculation you're doing. So usually would start this off with the equal sign. And then you would put the cell reference. So for example, B1, which contains the value 34. And then you'd simply just put, if you're going to do addition, you'd put plus, and then you'd put C1. Okay, so this is one way to do this. When you press enter, it gives you the total. Now, if I was to do this a different way, okay, so if I put equals, and then I put 34 plus 56 and press enter, I get exactly the same answer. But the important part with this is that you'll notice I never used the cell reference. Now, if I change one of these values, for example, 34 to 67, my formula, which is contained in cell reference D1, nothing's going to happen. What I need to do is obviously use cell references, because it remembers the place where you put in a number. So let's try this again. Let's put equals B1 plus C1. Press enter. We get 90. Now let's change that cell B1 to 67. Okay, and it automatically adjusts the formula and does the calculation. Another cool thing about this is that if you've put your formula in usually the first row, and you want to apply this same formula to all the values, in other words, add these up, you don't need to keep typing your formula each time. What you simply do is you can, well, again, you can either copy and then paste this down, okay, and it will automatically calculate the formula for you in each row. You can see here what it's done. It's used a different cell reference on each row. So this, in a nutshell, is basically the very basic way for you to use a formula. And you remember, you always use the equal sign. With Excel, you usually have, at least for the basic, we have these basic operators. You have addition, which is usually the plus symbol. You've then got the minus symbol, which is usually just the same, subtraction. Multiply, we have to use the star symbol. Okay, and then for division, you usually use the / symbol. Okay, and you can see here, I've just put these here for you. I'll put these in yellow. I'm just using the format bar. I'm going to center these and just make these a bit larger. So when you use formulas, equal sign, plus, minus, multiplication, and then division. Okay, so that completes this tutorial for part 1, and make sure you watch the next video if you'd like to go the next step further, where we're actually going to then start looking at more complex formulas and functions. So thank you very much,